What's up, everybody? Tom Pelissero here at CenturyLink Field after the Vikings lose 30-20 to the Seattle Seahawks. Vikings fall to 5-4, and just like that, for the entire hot start, they're in a position now where a loss next week to Detroit would put them back in last place in the NFC North Division. And there's going to be a ton of focus this week, and rightfully so, on Christian Ponder and the passing offense. You can't net 44 passing yards. You can't have a quarterback throw for under 70 yards twice in a 3-week span and not have a lot of the questions, a lot of the focus placed there. But the overall picture, the big picture for the Minnesota Vikings right now is they're a team that only really is doing one thing well. They're running the football. Adrian Peterson today runs for 182 yards on 17 carries. He completely changes the game in the early going. And you saw the Seahawks making some of the same mistakes that the Vikings have made a lot in terms of getting out of their gaps. He kept jump cutting back on him. In the second half, Seahawks became more disciplined there. The Vikings can't throw the football right now when they need to. Christian Ponder finishes 11-22 for 63 yards. Again, a lot of the focus is going to be on Christian Ponder, but it is a global issue. It is a matter of guys not being open down the field. It is a matter of them having the same protection issues. You saw some of those same sorts of wrap pressures where they brought two guys through the same gap, and those were getting home again. That's something that Seattle probably saw from the Tampa Bay tape and figured that the Vikings protection unit would have issues with that. There were plenty of times where Christian Ponders had so much emphasis placed on you got to step up in the pocket, you got to step into your throws. He did that at times today, and what happened was there was interior pressure. He ended up getting hit. That was affecting some of his passes. He had a couple of tip balls. There were a bunch of throws. Yes, he absolutely flat out missed. You saw when they did try to push the ball downfield in the second half, there were balls that were thrown to places that whether it's he thinks the receiver's going to be in a different spot or he's just uncorking some wild ones, it wasn't there. He tries to throw a go ball to Percy Harvin down the sideline. That granted, Harvin's ankle's acting up. He can't come back for the football, but it's still a high floating pass that's too far to the inside. There are a lot of different things going on in the passing game. Look over on the defensive side of the football, too. How many times is the Vikings defense actually giving the offense a short field to work on? It's not happening. They're not forcing turnovers. The Vikings had a turnover early in the game with Percy Harvin fumbling. That set up Seattle's first touchdown, wiped away that momentum that they had gained with Adrian Peterson busting loose on that big run and scoring a touchdown in the early going. The Vikings can't stop the run right now, and it's a variety of different things. There were gap issues. LaTroy Guion continues at the nose to have significant issues. Teams know that they can move him. There was some good scheming in terms of what Darrell Bevell did, probably because of the high level of familiarity they had with the Vikings personnel. They knew there were some spots where they could hit him. The Vikings did have some gap errors, guys simply not being in the right place at the right time. Some of the gadget plays, even swing passes, the Vikings didn't defend it well. What happens when you can't stop the run? When you give up 195 yards on 45 carries to a team, the middle of the field is going to be open. The bubble screen game is going to be open. The Vikings played a lot of single high safety in this game, bringing down a safety in an attempt to stop the run. Not only did it not work, but all of a sudden now you don't have split safeties to be able to help out with some of those some of the things in the underneath passing game. The Seahawks got creative too. They have Sidney Rice throw a pass in the early going. Everything Seattle wanted to do today, their offense, a lot like the Vikings offense, because they do have the former coordinator, revolves off of being able to run the football and then play the play-action pass off of the run. Once again, this is 4 consecutive games now that the Vikings have allowed a 100-yard rusher. They allow almost 200 yards rushing. It's not going to happen next week against Detroit because the Lions don't run the football that well. Now, I'm saying that anything's possible at this point, but the Lions are not a good running football team. It's going to be a completely different sort of a challenge, but you've still got to make sure that you're stopping the run. They have a big challenge in terms of shutting down that passing game with the weapons that the Lions are able to put out there. Think about this now. They're opening a stretch here of 4 consecutive division games. I don't think it anymore. It's a matter of can they split those games? Can they even take 3 out of 4 and be near the top of the standings? They've got to look at this and say, we've got to fix each individual aspect of what we're doing because we can't throw the football, we can't stop the run, and therefore we can't stop the pass. 3 of the 4 major phases, offense and defense, you're failing at right now. Now, I should say this within the context of if the Vikings hadn't won a couple of those games early in the season, if they hadn't beat San Francisco at the Dome, if they hadn't gone to Detroit and rode a couple of special teams touchdowns to be able to win that game, maybe performances like this are not so surprising. But now all of a sudden you've got guys in that locker room who, because you did get out to a 5-2 start, they're mad. They're ticked off. As Jared Allen said, it's everybody from the top down. It's coaches down to the quality control guys. It's players looking at themselves in the mirror and saying, is this really what we want to do? Do we want to allow this thing to get away from us? And that's not to call into question people's effort level or their study level. The Vikings have done that in the past, and maybe there will be someone like Antoine Winfield after the Indianapolis game who steps forward and does put those sorts of things on the table. But they've got a variety of different issues in a lot of different capacities. Put it this way. For as unproductive as the Vikings have been in the passing game, how much better would that passing game look if maybe at times you're getting the ball on the opponent's half of the field? Maybe there are times where you're playing with a short field and you can put some more points on the board. The Vikings don't have opportunities. They're not creating opportunities. Both sides are leaving the other side of the football out to dry. The special teams continues to do. They cut out some of the penalties today. Blair Walsh hits a 55-yard field goal. But you saw the frustration mounting. You see Percy Harvin, after one of Walsh's field goals, basically chasing Leslie Frazier up the sideline, yelling, waving his arms. There are people who are mad. Percy Harvin being chief among them. And part of that is Percy's a smart guy. I asked him after the game if there are things, because he suggested we've got to dial up some better pass plays. And I said, is it a matter of there being issues with the route concepts? And he said, hey, I'm not a coach. We're out there doing what we're told to do. I asked him about Christian Ponder, if he's still confident in him. He said, hey, I'm confident. He's the guy the coaches picked. I think what you're beginning to see is there is some tension there, and rightfully so. That's not to blame the players for it or the coaches for it, but you have a lot of people looking around and saying, this is unacceptable, because this is not just bad passing offense. This is incompetent passing offense. This is inept passing offense. They have issues in a variety of different capacities, but all the focus is going to come back to that. And Christian Ponder is going to be out there asking about it after the game if he's expecting the boos and the Joe Webb chants, and he said, hey, it's not the first time we've heard it at the Metrodome. He says he can use it as motivation. We'll see, because Christian Ponder, his countenance has changed after each game. He's a guy who looks a little bit beaten down right now. He's taking a beating on the football field. He's not being productive. You've got a young quarterback. It's a tenuous thing. Leslie Frazier says Ponder will remain the starting quarterback, and I agree with it, because I don't know that at this stage, when you've put so much into Christian Ponder being your franchise quarterback, you draft the guy number 12 overall, you make that commitment to change at this stage when you're going into these NFC North games. I don't think that solves anything. I also know that Joe Webb has some flaws in his game. Yes, he may be able to create some things with his feet, but do you want to make a seismic shift in your offense at this stage? You can make the argument that they got to do something differently. I think there's issues or things that they can do, though, that are slightly less drastic than benching your franchise quarterback. But we may be only a game or two away from them having to look at it and say, we've got to try something drastic here. It's going to be really interesting. The final game before the bye, back at the Metrodome against the Lions next Sunday, and a Lions team that certainly is going to be motivated to come out and avenge that loss they had at Ford Field back on September 30th. It's going to be an interesting, intense week once again at Winter Park. I'm headed back there on a red-eye in about 3 hours here, so I should probably get back to writing full Vikings coverage, as always, at 1500ESPN.com. We'll see you.